Archaeology, in brief, is what Michel Foucault calls his own research methodology. That is why I'm doing a video on this. This is not archaeology as we understand in the sense of the traditional subject of archaeology, that is studying old and ancient artifacts, monuments, etc. Foucault uses it in a completely different sense, though there is some relation. Now, his main interest was in history. In fact, he designed his own chair as Professor of History of Systems of Thought without accepting the traditional designation like Professor of History or Professor of Philosophy. So, history in a way has all our mysteries in it. But Foucault had differences with the way history was taught and done, and even now being taught and done by the traditional practitioners. He said that it is more important to find out the gaps, the inconsistencies, the incongruities of history rather than finding for a fixed and uniform and continuous pattern. That is the problem with our history. Whenever we read or write history, we look for a free flow and a continuous pattern. Say, for example, ancient India, medieval India, modern India, and things keep coming one after another as if they were pre planned, though it is not written, but it was pre planned. This is, in a way, largely the Hegelian idea of history, to tell you in brief. So, and which was also accepted by Marx in a more secularized fashion, but Foucault differed from both. So, the histories that we read or we write are actually violent histories. They suppress many things. So this is in sync with the postmodern idea of the small narrative. So the subaltern history group, for instance. Let me give you a concrete example. We say Indian freedom movement or Bongo Bongo movement. But if you go by Foucauldian term and Foucauldian suggestions, that you may end up discovering that the so-called Indian freedom movement or the so-called Bongo Bongo movement did not include all Indians or all Bengalis. What was the role, or you know what was the position of the, say, cobblers of Bengal during the Bongo Bongo movement? Have you found this on record anywhere? Cobblers, blacksmiths, say goldsmiths, these small things, or sexual minorities, minorities within minorities. These are not there. So histories are actually grand narratives. So against this, Foucault proposes this archaeology, and not only finding small narratives, but then it challenges the very way historical ideas have been formed and perpetuated. For example, in his study of the history of madness in Europe, especially France, that is madness and civilization, he categorically finds out that, states that it is more important not to find out how many or when mad people are incarcerated, but why and how they were incarcerated. That is, how they were identified as mad. Before Foucault, we thought it to be almost a clinical or scientific truth that mad are mad, you know. But Foucault found out so many gaps and holes in that, and also showed us that madness is a political category. For example, many French people, youth, who were not doing anything productive or who were not contributing to the national economy, in the eyes of the then government, they were incarcerated, in madhouses on the pretext that they were mad. So this is what Foucault tells you. Or say, uh, La Nation de la Clinique, that is the birth of the clinic, birth of the hospitals. We think the government started giving hospitals for our benefit, not that, according to Foucault. It is to keep, an eye on you. In medieval and post-medieval times, medical practitioners are private. But what happened in the bargain is that, you know, Government did not have any record or yes, details of people who are suffering from which disease, say venereal disease and other things. That means those who are suffering from that, they are going to brothels, prostitutes, which was personal secret. Prostitute is not a politically correct term, but then sex workers, we can say. So that is your personal secret. But once you have a government hospital and then you register your name, and then your things become public, public document. So apparently hospitals came up for giving you improved treatment, free treatment in place of the medieval private practitioners. But actually Foucault shows that these were to have controlling mechanisms on citizens by knowing their secrets. Of course, I'm simplifying. There are more to it. But then these videos are not as replacements of these books, not replacements of these books, but to encourage you to read further. And then people from other states, especially spies and all, went to those places, houses of ill repute, and they had the disease. So it would be easier if you abolish private practice system and then record them in the hospitals, government hospitals. So compare with this, the current coronavirus situation. I'm not saying this is exactly the same, but there are similar patterns in certain gaps. So that is archaeology. In a way, if I may interpret it again, rephrase it loosely, though this is a Derridan term, archaeology in brief is a deconstruction of history, including the very constituents of traditional history. Why, how, and where these are more important than the traditional chronology given that this happened and that happened and that happened. And no, why happened and what are the gaps that are in between. Just as I gave the example of, say, who knows what was the role of the cobblers in the partition of Bengal movement. Now, this has been elaborated by other critics. Now we will understand that Gayatri's works, Can the Subaltern Speak, is basically an extension of Foucault's idea of archaeology only. To a great extent, Said's Orientalism is also an extension of Foucault's idea of the discourse. Said admits that Gayatri actually doesn't, she rather quarrels with Foucault and theologian Guattari. I mean, at least early Gayatri. Later, she acknowledged their greatness. But anyway, so that is why we should do more and more archaeology. So, and the book where Foucault elaborates this is called The Archaeology of Knowledge in English translation. You know, the English translation was made available in 1972. The original French book in 1968, I think. So this is it. This is a very important concept. We will do some more things on Foucault. The ground was being prepared with my previous videos. Now we will do.